Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. Team 7 stood in front of the full council, civilian and shinobi together. The reason? They were present during a coup d'etat, and Konoha needed to know if they could use it to their advantage in any way. But first, the council needed to hear the full story, so Kakashi gave them his report. At the end, they were all very quiet, processing what had exactly happened. The civilian were worried to learn that Naruto was in fact the heir of Whirlpool. That certainly placed them in a difficult position. Even if they were never violent towards the boy, they often found ways to make his life miserable, like slightly upping the prices, or selling slightly spoiled food, nothing too noticeable and easily deniable, but the boy knew it. While the civilians were considering ways to erase their previous mistakes, the ninja were quickly connecting the dots, especially one Hyuga Hiyashi. Uzumaki-sama, said the Hyuga, surprising everyone by treating him as an equal. Could you give me some of your time after this meeting? I wish to discuss some things regarding your trade fleet. Why? But of course Hyuga-sama, it would be my pleasure. Answered Naruto with a bright smile. Keep the pleasantries for later please. Interrupted the Sandame. Kakashi, what is Wave's current political status? Our client was proclaimed as the new daimyo, but he isn't a politician. I doubt he'll keep the position for long. Additionally, it should be mentioned that all the officials of the former daimyo who could have taught or advised him have, resisted, during the assault on the palace, so, he's on his own to manage a country without any formation or advices. Sake Haruno raised her hand, and Hiruzen nodded in her direction to allow her to talk. Sandame-sama, maybe we should send humanitarian aid to Wave in order to improve the Leaf's standing among the population. With the political situation described by Hataki-san, they would no doubt ask to be placed under Leaf Protectorate after a few years. Danzo was giving Naruto a slightly disappointed gaze, saddened that he hadn't thought of that. He quickly reconsidered when he saw the gigantic and slightly wicked smile on the blonde's face. My apologizes Haruno-san, I am afraid I already did that. After all, I couldn't possibly let all those poor orphans to fend for themselves, could I? The civilian side looked at him with wide eyes, shocked that a mere 12 years old managed to beat them to the punch. They could have sworn it was a political maneuver if it wasn't for the sheer honesty in his voice. The ninja side saw right through it, and Naruto received more than one appraising look. Hiyashi in particular seemed to have even more interest in him while Danzo had to forcibly contain his proud smile. From the corner of his eye, the old warhawk saw Hiruzen smiling amusedly at him. Sake Haruno quickly recovered. As the head of the Konoha Mercantile Guild, she refused to be outdone by a kid. Uzumaki-san, I heard your fief is barely recovering and still under reconstruction. Is it really wise to spend so many resources? Naruto waved off her concern without a care, not even for the clear disrespect. Ma, don't worry. Whirlpool will be fine. Since we rebuilt our ports, trade is going just fine and more towns are being rebuilt, and if we find ourselves in a shortage of supplies, well Daimyo-sama owes me $1 billion or $2, he'll be happy to help. Hearing this, Sum actually shocked. Daimyo-sama owes you what? How the hell did you manage to get Daimyo-sama to be in debt with you? I didn't, my great-grandfather did. He lent some money to help build Konoha and the fire capital. Anyway, as I was saying, you don't have to worry about my fief Haruno-san. Sake Haruno may be a stubborn woman, but even she could say when she was defeated, and she was in fact currently ranting in her head about her own idiocy. She had let her dislike for the boy interfere, and what should have come out as a concerned question now appeared as an insult and a mark of disrespect. She could only hope that the boy wouldn't hold it against her and that he still had a crush on her daughter that she could use. Alright, I think our questions have been answered and we have a good idea of Wave's future situation. This meeting is adjourned. With a sigh, the Sandaime rose from his seat and made his way to the exit, giving an appreciative nod to Naruto along the way. The clan heads began filing out of the room, looking at Naruto in a new light. Shikaku stopped near him. Good job, kid. That's one fine way to show you're a player. Naruto smiled widely. I have no idea what you're talking about, Nara-sama. Of course. Chuckle, of course. The Nara left the room with an amused smile plastered on his face. Hiyashi stopped next to Naruto, gaining the attention of the blonde. Ah, Hyuga-sama, shall we discuss my fleet around diner? It is quite late. Most certainly. May I invite you to the Hyuga compound? I accept with pleasure. I heard a lot about the talent of the Hyuga cooks. Hiyashi nodded and led him away from Team 7, Sasuke fuming once again at the importance his teammate was taking. He could not accept the fact that Naruto was now his equal both as a ninja and socially. Before, he could still see himself as superior because the Uchiha were a noble clan, but now he learned that his teammate was a noble too. What next? His ancestors were daimyo. He couldn't accept the idea that he was equal in everything with someone he had despised all his life. He had to find a way to become superior again. If it wasn't through skills, then it would be through fame. The walk toward the Hyuga household was calm, even if the villagers were looking absolutely shocked to see the Hyuga clan head walking with the demon brat, and talking to him like he was someone of equal stature. Their talk mainly revolved around the most recent political events, both national and international. Hiyashi wanted to see just how politically aware the boy was, and he was absolutely shocked to see that Naruto knew almost as much as him. When they arrived at the Hyuga manor, Naruto was led to Hiyashi's office after he sent a branch member warn the cooks that he had a guest. Once in the office, Hiyashi went directly to the serious stuff. Well, Uzumaki-sama, you are better informed than I thought. I heard your fleet is the fastest in existence, is that true? According to my admiral, my trade fleet can go from hot water to tide in a bit under 3 days. Must I understand you wish for a quick mean to export your sake? Yes, it would give us more opportunities. It so happens that the Tide Daimyo is quite fond of our sake. Instating a trade route between outports and Tide could result in massive benefits on both our parts. Naruto smiled. Even better. We could ask the Tide Daimyo to let us put up Whirlpool commercial outposts allowing the entry of goods in his country tax-free. The idea of having more of your sake, faster and cheaper will probably be enough to convince him. Hiyashi nodded. This seems to be worked out. May I consider ourselves as commercial partners? Most certainly. Good. I am a little curious. What are your plans after Wave asks to join your fief? Do you know of the Susanoo's Teeth Archipelago? Yes, a very rich zone, but difficult to sail, littered with cliffs, sandbanks and other treacherous obstacles. The main island, Foam, is rumored to be especially rich, but this cluster of islands is poor and in constant anarchy because of the pirate fleets that infest the smaller islands. I do recall that water once tried to purge these islands only to loose their whole fleet. Yes, very accurate. There are no less than 200 pirate bases, from a single dock for a lonely ship to entire harbors housing no less than 8 ships. They made prosperous life on Foam impossible, and Lightning's south coast is subjected to so many raids that they have to import goods through their neighbors of Frost. But even then, it isn't safe and Susanoo's pirates often raid the trade routes. I just so happen to be currently using these trade routes a lot. You do realize your fleet will be attacked. Oh, but that's what I want. Once the pirates do this very mistake, I will have an international excuse to raid and conquer the archipelago. My admiral already took contact with no less than 12 fleets and convinced them to join over once the battle begins. My fleet also has detailed maps of the archipelago and the emplacement of almost all the pirate bases. Kiri failed to seize these islands. What makes you think you can? First, they didn't have inside help. Second, their ships were primitive at best while the Whirlpool fleet is nimble and technologically advanced, and last but not least, they weren't led by Sufuku Daijiro. Hiyashi's eyes widened. You have Daijiro the Kraken under your orders. Yes, you could say he was honor-bound to help since his father was Whirlpool's previous admiral. He really likes my plan. Though, I'll admit I wasn't the one to come up with it. Now Hiyashi knew that Naruto would succeed. Daijiro had been a famed and feared pirate captain and he had many nicknames. The Kraken, Blood Wave, the Fury of Whirlpool, now he understood the last one. Then, the implications dawned on him. You will have complete control of the sea trade on the eastern part of the elemental nations, and no one will be able to accuse you of anything. You will have simply defended yourself against pirate attacks and done the world a favor by removing them. Impressive. Yes, and since I am a prudent man, or boy for now, my men have already contacted a few independent ninja clans to settle down on Foam and some of the biggest islands. I already have 3 clans interested in settling down on Foam while 5 others want to build their fortresses in the islands, and a few others are debating the possibility. Hiyashi quickly recalculated everything he knew of the boy. He had been told the blonde was the dead last, with no talent as a shinobi, an idiot of untold proportion with no hope of redemption. Clearly, the last part was wrong, so absolutely wrong, and while he didn't know about the part on his ninja talent, he did know that the boy was one devious leader. While looking like a benevolent man, he would gather the largest military and economical power in the elemental nations. He would have thousands of fighters ready to answer to him, and if they were at the level of those that fought in Wave, then he would become the most powerful individual in the world on a military point of view. That alone would make him indispensable to Konoha. As an added bonus, people probably won't pay too much attention to me. I mean, sure, taking over Susanoo's teeth will be impressive, but they'll probably think I don't have the manpower to hold it on my own. And they are right, that's why I'm recruiting clans far and wide. They'll think I'll simply retreat and let the pirates come back to the teeth. By the time they realize that, no, the pirates haven't come back, the islands will be well populated and fortified. If that wasn't enough, my shinobi will be known for their barriers, not their offensive power, thus they will think my troops just have sturdy defenses, and they won't see any interest in attacking someone that obviously isn't a threat. I see. But in the end jealousy will appear and they will try to destroy you like they did Uzushio. Yes, but when that time comes, my forces will be at their peak, and I will have become an unavoidable part of the trade world. I will be irremovable. The only major countries that won't depend on me for their importations are Rock and Wind, and neither are in any position to threaten my possessions. I see. Tell me, since we are allies, Naruto smiled at the shift from trade partners to allies. Could you use that hold over the Eastern Sea to help the Hyuga? Oh, you mean with your daughters? Well, most certainly. After all, I must stand by my allies, said Naruto with a smile. Hiyashi smiled back, satisfied with the way things were going. And of course the Hyuga will stand by your side, as should an ally. Naruto's smile widened, pleased with the way things were going. He now had support from the most powerful clan in Konoha and he didn't even need to negotiate. A soft knock on the door was heard, and Hiyashi invited inside the person. The door slid open to reveal a beautiful woman with long indigo hair and Byakugan with a tint of lavender, and a small girl with the same eyes but long brown hair. Husband, I heard we have a guest. Indeed, Uzumaki-sama, meet my wife, Hyuga Hitomi, and my third child, Hyuga Hikari. Naruto rose to his feet and bowed low to Hitomi and Hikari. It is my pleasure to meet you. Hitomi smiled kindly at the well-mannered boy while Hikari looked at him in awe. Sir, are you a ninja like father? Yes, but I'm a bit young so I'm not as strong as him. 8 years old Hikari looked at him in wonder. She had rarely seen people without the Byakugan, and it surprised her to see what normal eyes looked like. A branch member came in and informed them that the diner would soon be ready. Hiyashi led them to the diner room, and Naruto was introduced to the two last members of the family. Uzumaki-sama, this is my brother, Hazashi, Naruto bowed respectfully. And my nephew, Neji. Naruto looked at him, he was familiar. Washi-senpai. Neji's eyebrows shot up. Kitsune. Naruto nodded with a smile, and the Hyuga boy smiled as well. Ah, it is a pleasure to see you again. You graduated this year, correct? The blonde nodded again. How is your team? Taka is the same as ever, cold and globally uncaring, and Sakura is being her fangirl self. Neji smiled compassionately. You didn't have much luck, being placed with both Taka and a fangirl. I suspect Hokage-sama placed us both here to push her to work more and hopefully grow up. The sad thing is that Taka needs to grow up too and doesn't seem to want to. He's still focused on avenging his clan. Not a bad objective if you ask me, but he shouldn't live only for that. And then there's this superiority complex of his. Neji nodded in understanding. Meanwhile, the adults were looking at them in surprise as they talked like old friends. Maybe we should stop using our codename, don't you think, Naruto? Yes, you're right, Neji. By the way, how's your team? Eccentric, to say the least. My sensei is made a guy, did you hear of him? I heard of him and I heard him, sadly. I am surprised your ears are still functioning, that man spends almost more time screaming than breathing. Everyone who knew who Guy chuckled in good humor. It has gotten worse. Guy-sensei managed to corrupt my male teammate and he now wears the same horrid green spandex and bowl cut. Lee, that's his name, screams nearly as much as sensei does. My female teammate and I came up with a technique that emulates earplugs with chakra alone, and we have become adept enough with it to raise it in a second. Ironically, this idiotic use of chakra raised our chakra control incredibly. Said Neji with an amused smile. Tenten was quite astounded when she saw the results. Wait, your other teammate is Tenten. Brown-haired girl with a love for weapons. You know her. Yeah, we have a common interest, Fuinjutsu. Hiyashi perked up, listening more intently. You are interested in Fuinjutsu? Yes, partly because it's fun and partly because of a family tradition. Compared to Whirlpool's old seal library, what we have in Konoha is absolutely miserable. I heard that my ancestors were capable of using seals in battle, and not just exploding tags. I heard they had seals that could emulate ninjutsu. That is impressive. Yes, but think a bit farther. What would happen if you were to combinate seals creating elemental chakra? Let's say, earth and water. Every adult's eyes widened. Mokuden, murmured Hiyashi in shock. Naruto smirked. Yes, with enough work I may be able to recreate the techniques of the Shadaime Hokage through Fuinjutsu. But it will be in a long time. Right now I'm still trying to figure out how to do even a simple chakra nature conversion seal. Apparently, changing the nature of your chakra is hell, even with seals helping along the way. It would be easier with a neutral chakra, but I don't think that exists. Hiyashi blinked and looked at his brother. During the conversation, they had taken seats around the table, but they kept listening to the two youth, but it looked like it may be a good time to place a word. Naruto-sama, if it helps you, I heard Jiraiya-sama speaking once of Sage Chakra. He said that natural energy made all elemental techniques equally easy because it wasn't attuned to any particular element. Naruto stopped and looked at Hiyashi, wide-eyed. That's it. If I can harness natural energy, I can hope to actually make progress. Thank you, Hiyashi-sama. Hiyashi nodded. At this moment, the doors of the kitchen opened, and dishes were disposed on the table. The diner was mostly Neji and Naruto talking about what they had done in their career, and once Hikari had left the table to go rest, they talked about Naruto's plans. Once he had finished explaining his plan, he looked at the people around the table, and quite enjoyed their shocked expressions. I knew you were devious, said Neji, but I didn't know it was to this extent. Why, thank you, I worked hard to be like that, answered Naruto with a cheeky grin. Does Danzo-sama know all this? Why bother the old man? He is busy with other things. Besides, I don't really need his approval. It's not like I'll start a war. Lightning will even have to thank me for removing the pirates harassing their south coast, said Naruto with a smirk. Neji smirked as much. And what do you plan to ask as thanks? Oh, I think you have a good idea of who I'll ask for, answered Naruto with a smile. A week later, Team 7 was waiting for their teacher at their meeting point. It was a peaceful morning, nothing was out of the ordinary, the sky was clear and the air was warm. In a flutter of swirling leaves, Kakashi appeared, but he didn't look too pleased. Alright, who did what? I just received a convocation to the Hokage office for our whole squad. Sasuke and Sakura both looked at Naruto. Don't look at me like that. I stopped making pranks when I became serious. With a sigh, Kakashi signaled them to follow him. They made their way to the Hokage office in silence, with Sasuke and Sakura occasionally glaring at Naruto, much to his irritation. When they arrived at the secretary's desk, she pointed at the door. Kakashi knocked on the door, and instead of the angered voice he expected, the Sandaime calmly told him to come in. Kakashi led his squad inside, and instead of an irate old man, he saw an interested Kage and one Hyuga Hiyashi. Kakashi stood on the right of the Hokage, curious as to why he was in the same room as Hyuga Hiyashi. Team 7, Hiyashi-san requested your presence, though he wanted to wait until you were here to explain his reasons. Thank you for your patience, Hokage-sama, said Hiyashi, bowing to his leader, and then turning to the team. The reason I requested your team's presence is because Naruto-san and I have some business in Tide, however as a genin he does not have the same flexibility in schedule me and my fellow jonin benefit from. For this reason, I wish to hire your team for an escort mission to Tide. We may be gone from 2 weeks to 2 whole months, depending on how well the negotiations go. At my demand, and to compensate for the interruption of your schedules, I paid for an A- rank, even though it is classified C rank. Is this acceptable? Naruto and Kakashi were smiling widely. Sakura was contemplating new ways to tempt Sasuke on Tide's famous beaches with some sexy bikini, and the Uchiha was fuming at the training time lost. Kakashi of course accepted readily, always ready for some paid vacation. Hiyashi nodded, satisfied. Hiyashi-san, if I may, said Naruto, surprising everyone with the choice of suffix. Could we make a detour to Whirlpool? We will visit a daimyo. Presenting him with a gift would put him in better dispositions. What gift do you have in mind? Maybe an ornate bow. I heard he was quite fond of hunting. Hiyashi nodded appreciatively. That would be a fine gift. Excellent. I will warn my men. The bow should be ready in 2 days and a ship should be waiting for us in Wave in 1. That will give me the occasion to see how Wave is doing and to finally visit Whirlpool, if only a little. When shall we leave? Kakashi-san, would it be acceptable for us to leave in an hour? Certainly Hiyashi-sama, my team will go prepare at once. Unless of course they took my advice and prepared a ready-to-go pack. Asked Kakashi, looking curiously over his students. Sasuke grumbled but nodded. Sakura nodded as well, relieved she had taken the advice, and Naruto got a scroll out. Dobi, we're supposed to have a pack, not some paper," said Sasuke with a smirk. Then he remembered just what you could hide in a scroll. Naruto calmly unrolled his scroll and began unsealing his supplies. To everyone's shock, he had sealed inside 5 tents, 10 spares of clothes, 2 months of ration bars, a full bed, sheets included, a hefty sum of money, cooking wares, fishing and hunting equipment, cloaks for hot and cold climates, 5 spare staves, 12 pairs of shoes, including some for extreme climates, a repair kit to take care of his equipment, an unknown but very high number of spare shuriken and kunai, trap parts, a good supply of scrolls of all sizes, inks and brushes. Alright, enough Naruto, seal all these things back in, my office isn't that big. Kakashi looked in pure disbelief as his student resealed all his things into the scroll. A question popped in his mind, and he felt he would soon be both very happy and very shocked. Naruto, you didn't unseal any water. It's because the 3 months of water I've sealed wouldn't fit in the office. Kakashi's hunch proved to be true. So basically, you have enough supply in this scroll to ensure the team's survival in any situation. Yup. I also got enough meds to set up a field hospital if need be. Took me some time and a lot of money to gather all that, but I think it was worth it. Indeed. It's good to know that you're prepared, but it's not a reason to completely rely on you. I expect everyone to have their pack ready. Now, go prepare and gather at the East Gate as soon as you're ready. The team left the building quickly to take their packs while Naruto calmly walked with Hiashi to the gate. 15 minutes later, they were taking to the trees after Naruto sent a message to Whirlpool through his scroll. They reached Wave a day and a half later. Seeing the bridge, Hiashi stopped a moment. The Great Whirlpool Bridge. Impressive. A great arch bearing the name of the bridge had been built above the road, and also housed a guard house. From inside, Minamoto Tomo emerged along with a squad of 5 samurai. The black-haired woman bowed low in front of her superior. Naruto-sama, Hiashi-sama, a small storm slowed the ship, it should arrive in the late afternoon. When Daimyo-sama learned that you were coming, he invited you to his palace to share a lunch with him. Well, we shouldn't keep a daimyo waiting, don't you think so, Hiashi-san? Asked Naruto with a big smile. Most certainly, answered Hiashi with a smirk. This kind of interactions thoroughly spooked Kakashi, probably because they acted like they were great friends. Quickly, the group made its way to the daimyo's palace, and shared a lunch with Tazuna. During the meal, Naruto asked many questions about how Wave was doing, and was quite pleased with the answers, in more than one way. Tazuna was holding up the best he could, but he wasn't an administrator, far from that, and they learned, to Naruto's satisfaction, that they had decided to consult the people on whether or not they should remain independent. The results would be known in about a month. After lunch, Naruto and Hiashi went to inspect the Wave garrison, and Naruto was very pleased to see that some of the locals had enrolled themselves in an effort to have a competent force to defend the country should Whirlpool leave. The newly formed militia was learning at a good pace, something highly satisfying. Once the visit of the Whirlpool HQ was finished, a messenger came and told Naruto that his ship was waiting in the harbor, so the group began its trek to the port. Sasuke was, once again, irritated. Seeing his teammates' power constantly was annoying at best, and downright infuriating most of the time, and this was no exception. But he hadn't seen the worst yet. When they reached the harbor, a collective jaw drop happened, even Naruto was shocked. In the middle of the relatively big harbor, there was a lone ship. It had probably once been an Akatebune, but now it was more of a floating palace. The bow was made of 2 serpentine dragons with their whiskers intertwined, holding together onto a pearl, the wooden statues being covered in gold. A small building followed on about a quarter of the ship, then a courtyard with a small garden, and finally from the middle of the ship to the stern, a palace, fashioned to resemble the castles of old stood. And standing smugly near the pier, was Daijiro wearing a dark blue kimono bearing the crest of Whirlpool. The group slowly closed the distance, admiring the ship all along. Once they were close enough, Daijiro began walking toward them, a bright triumphant smile on his face as he bowed in front of Naruto. Naruto-sama, this ship is the pride of Whirlpool. I hope it is to your liking and good enough for a diplomatic mission, said the admiral with mirth in his voice. Naruto kept his gaze on the ship, still in awe. It will be perfect, Daijiro, absolutely perfect. It is truly impressive. When can we leave? As soon as you request it. Good. Then we'll leave as soon as we embark. Quickly, the group embarked and the ship began moving. To everyone's surprise, it moved very fast for its size. Hiashi, curious, turned to the captain. Daijiro-san, I am no naval expert, but I am fairly certain a ship of this size isn't supposed to move at this speed. You are right, Hiashi-sama. However, I made a few interesting discoveries during my youth, including an old device transforming ambient chakra into energy. Once I had a good idea of how it worked, I managed to recreate it and linked it to the engines. Now, Whirlpool has the strongest and fastest fleet. Hiashi nodded, accepting the answer. The ride was calm, and the next day they reached Whirlpool Island, more specifically the southern port. The city was growing nicely and many construction sites were visible, indicating that the island was indeed doing well. When they landed, they were welcomed by Masahiro and a full platoon of samurai that escorted them to a mansion that had been established in case Naruto decided to visit. Of course, Naruto regretted greatly that he couldn't visit his lands like he wanted, but he couldn't really stay too long if they wanted to be on time for the meeting with the daimyo. They left Whirlpool the next morning with the ornamented bow. The travel to Tide was a calm one. Sasuke would stay in his quarters and brood passionately, Sakura would try to infiltrate said quarters, and Naruto enjoyed the anomaly that was the small garden on the bridge. How that thing was kept healthy, he would never know, but he certainly didn't complain. Occasionally, one of the three Fun making up the escort would come close enough that he could wave at the crew. When they reached the harbor of Tide's capital, they saw that an official delegation was waiting for them, and looked positively gobs make it at the ship. Naruto smirked. Yes, Dream-kun, just there. Ooh, this is the best. Ah, I couldn't agree more, sister. Yes, oh, your hands feel so good. Hey, I try my best. I don't know what's better, your hands or the fact there's two of you, ooh. Yeah, it's nice and all, but our backs are relaxed enough. How about taking care of our front boys? Naruto awoke in his room in Tide, with one very hard problem. Those vixens. Sigh, I wish they were real. 3 weeks later, they were leaving the country. The Tide daimyo had quickly agreed to the creation of Whirlpool trade outposts since it would be beneficial for the economy of the country, but the details had taken some time to be discussed. A clan of chakra-using sailors originated from Wind Country, the Kazeshio, had been selected by Naruto to oversee the construction of the outposts. The Kazeshio had a respectably good fleet, but they were choked by the competition in wind, so this new position was a godsend for them. The fact that they trained in ninjutsu ensured that their ships and outposts would be well defended. While they were in Tide, the Hokage had sent a message to them, telling them to wait in Wave to see what the people decided to do regarding the future of the country. Of course, Naruto was thrilled. However, when he finally reached Wave, a little surprise was waiting for him on the docks. Once they walked down the pier, they were surprised to see a group of Okami talking with a group of light blue-haired ninja. The Okami seemed extremely friendly towards the other ninja, something that put Naruto slightly at ease. He noticed Okami Izumo talking to a tall man with spiky electric blue hair, very dark blue pants and a matching shirt, plated fingerless gloves and shinobi combat boots. He had two ninjutsu on his back with their sheath crossed and bore two katana on his side in a samurai fashion. He had a kunai holster on his right leg and a pouch on his back on the same side. Interestingly, he seemed to have a birthmark or tattoo in the form of crossed lightning bolts on the cheek Naruto could see. Apparently, Izumo and the man were talking quite happily and comparing batches of photo. If the silly grins and happy laughs were anything to go by, they were talking about their children. Good. Family men are easy to deal with, you give them a place where their family is safe and they're happy. Their appearance seems familiar, but I can't seem to remember from where. Izumo finally noticed the approaching group and signaled his friend. Both began to put the photos back into their wallets, and Naruto saw a few happy teens on said photos, confirming his theory. When they were close enough, Izumo and the man bowed, Naruto absent-mindedly noticing that the birthmark seemed to be present on both of the man's cheeks and that he had yellow eyes with a ring of blue around the pupil. Another thing he noticed was the X-shaped scar sitting in the middle of his face. Naruto-sama, it is a pleasure to see you. Likewise Izumo-san, said Naruto, nodding his head. He then smiled at the blue-haired man. And you are? I am Reizatsu Rero, head of the Reizatsu clan. Whoa, wait a minute, the Reizatsu clan. You mean the clan that worked with mine to create the sword of the Nadaime? The man nodded with a smile. I am happy to see that the old alliance was not forgotten. I have come here to request your help. Certainly, I will be happy to help my clan's allies. Thank you. Since you are from Konoha, you know full well of Kumo's hunt for bloodlines, correct? Yes, I do. Well, it may look like it stopped, but inside the borders of lightning, it is still going strong. Said Rero gravely. My clan has always been one of their prime targets, and now that they can't try to capture bloodlines from other countries, they hunt down the bloodline clans of lightning with even more ferocity. We have lived in hiding for a long time, but they are closing in, we need a way out. When we heard that the Uzumaki were alive and that Whirlpool was being rebuilt, we decided to contact you. My clan asks for asylum and protection, please help us in our time of need. Rero bowed low once he finished. Stand up. Where is your clan currently? Keiko-san was kind enough to let us stay in Whirlpool for the time being. We couldn't stay in lightning any longer without being discovered, and we don't have the might to face Kumo. I see. Well, I'll be happy to offer you asylum on my lands, but if you do settle down in my fief, then you'll have to wear Konoha headbands and flak jackets. Also, I may require a small relocation soon, depending on Wave's choice. Thank you. I trust we will be as far away from lightning as we can. Of course. It was at this moment that Sasuke, fed up with seeing his teammate gain power while he did nothing, decided to speak up. If it is a safe place away from lightning that you seek, I can offer you far better. You could settle in my lands in the south of Fire Country, as far away from lightning as you can get. Said Sasuke with a smirk, causing Naruto to scowl, but before the blonde could warn his potential ally against the Uchiha, said man beat him to the punch. I am afraid not, Uchiha-san. All the vassal clans of the Uchiha, such as the Hamagawa clan whose lands you offer us, have, at one point or another, been forced to integrate your clan. On the other hand, the Uzumaki were known for treating their vassals with honor and respect, for this reason we chose the Uzumaki. Answered Rero calmly, making the Uzumaki smile in satisfaction and the Uchiha growl in annoyance. Now that this is covered, said Naruto, let's go to the Whirlpool HQ, I would like to know more about your clan Rero-san. A week had passed and the governing body of Wave had requested Naruto's presence at the palace. Of course, Naruto had hurried over there, escorted by Okami Izumo, Reizatsu Rero and Minamoto Tomo. As he reached the throne room, he felt thrilled, he knew what was coming. The officials from all of the main settlements of Wave were present, and all seemed happy. Tazuna looked impatient, like he was 3 phrases away from his liberation, which was probably true. Bowing, Naruto and his subordinates seated themselves. Tazuna cleared his throat and began speaking. Uzumaki Naruto, Lord of Whirlpool, it has been decided by the people of Wave that independence was not as important as safety. Your troops have shown strength and kept us safe in our darkest hours, freeing us from 2 tyrants. Wave wishes to entrust the future of this land and its inhabitants into your hands, do you accept? It is an honor, I accept and will strive to make Wave a better place, and ensure all of its children are fed and cared for. Then I bow to you, my lord, said Tazuna as he, along with all the officials, bowed to the floor. May Wave prosper under your guidance. Naruto rose to his feet, satisfied with the way his plan had gone. Rise. First, the Reizatsu clan will come from Whirlpool and settle down in Wave, with Reizatsu Rero appointed as central administrator of Wave and head of the ninja military if any are trained in Wave. Minamoto Tomo is hereby appointed as head of the Samurai Corps of Whirlpool in Wave. Tazuna-san, I will require your services in the future. I'll send you the specificities for some bridges, and I would appreciate it if you could look them over and see if you can build them, and if you can prepare a few first batches of plans before you are shown the place of construction. That I can do. Man, am I happy to go back to bridges. Tazuna sighed in relief. Naruto smirked amusedly. I have no doubt you are. Now, Wave will undergo a heavy transformation. Due to its geographical situation, it has potential to become a major trade hub, something I do plan to turn Wave into, especially now that trade outposts are being established in Tide. Expect heavy investments in the island's economy soon. All the mayors had grins when they heard that. Investments meant work. Work meant the island would be back on its feet quicker, and if Wave indeed became a trading hub, then they never would have to worry about the next meal ever again. Rero was glad to have a new home far enough from lightning but still close enough to his new friend Izumo, and Naruto was happy that his plan was a success. The next day, the Leaf Team and Hiashi departed from Wave to inform the Konoha Council of what transpired in Wave, and once again a good chunk of Wave's population had come to see them off. The Wave division in its entirety stood at attention, proudly displaying their light blue armor marked with the crest of Whirlpool, Wave's emblem just below it. There were over 100 recruits, not bad if you asked Naruto, and while they still had a long way to go, they were determined. Naruto gave a small speech, causing the crowd to cheer, and they were off. 5 months since graduation, and he had already extended his fief by a good 50%, added a new ninja clan to his ranks along with a complete fleet, and established trade outposts that would guarantee his holdover trade in the Eastern Sea. Kami-sama, it's good to be me. A week later, they reached Konoha and went to the Hokage. Considering the nature of both the mission and the intel they brought with them, the debriefing was made in front of the council. Once the group entered the room, Hiashi went to his seat calmly and looked over the council. The clan heads seemed completely bored. They had already guessed what happened, so they didn't really want to bother themselves, but that was the procedure. The civilians, on the other hand, were curious and wanted to know how the trip would affect trade in the region. The Sandaime came into the room and sat on his chair. Very well. This will be a short meeting. I have much to do, so I don't have time for hours of discussions. What are the results of the trip? Did the Tide Daimyo agree? Hiashi nodded. Discussing the details took some time, but the Tide Daimyo agreed. Whirlpool commercial outposts are currently being built along Tide's northern coast. I see. Naruto-kun, Who did you recruit to take care of these outposts? Asked the wizened leader. The blonde smiled. The Kazeshio clan, formerly of Wind. They had little to no ties with Suna, thus ensuring I wouldn't have to deal with spies, and I got them out of a difficult situation, thus earning their loyalty. I talked with them, they are sailors, and even though they train a bit in ninjutsu, they don't lie much. They are honest and loyal to Whirlpool. Hiruzen nodded, satisfied with the answer. Good, good. Now, what of Wave? They decided to integrate the fief of Whirlpool. Was Naruto's answer. Uzumaki-sama, said Sake Haruno, gaining the attention of the whole room. Surely managing all these trade routes must be difficult. Konoha's mercantile guild would be happy to lend you its services and experience. May I invite you for dinner to discuss the agreement? Said the Pinkett with a charming smile. But it was in vain. I'm afraid that will not be possible, Haruno-san. Said Naruto apologetically. As you said during the last meeting where we attended, my fief is still recovering, so we need all the benefits to help Whirlpool, and now Wave. As for the diner, it would have been with pleasure, but I have errands I must run. Answered Naruto with a polite smile. Sake nodded her acceptance of the answer, not that she had much choice. The fact that he threw her words back in her face wasn't pleasant, far from that. All right, is everything covered? Asked the Hokage. Good. Team 7, report to my office tomorrow. I know I'm asking a lot out of your team, but you are my best genin team, and I need you on a special mission. Hiruzen then rose to his feet and left. Sasuke smirked. Feeling his talents were finally recognized, Sakura smiled proudly at being part of such a team. Kakashi simply shrugged it off, but Naruto couldn't help but feel the compliment, while honest, was there to keep them off his back. With a shrug, he left the room and went to his apartment. Note to self, find a new flat. The next day, the team gathered in front of the Hokage's secretary's desk, waiting to be all present before going in. Once the last of them arrived, Kakashi nodded to the secretary who told the Hokage through the interphone, they didn't have to wait long before being sent in. Standing in front of their leader, they wondered what kind of mission he could have assigned them. Hiruzen looked over them, reconsidering one last time his choice, before nodding in approval. Team 7, you are here for a mission of the utmost importance. As you know, our relations with Kumo are strained. Because of that, the daimyo of Hot Water and Frost worry. They know that, should a war between the Leaf and the Cloud break out, their countries would be the battlefield. Because of this, they have tried for a long time to pacify our relations with Kumo. Recently, they requested a joint C rank. Frost will hire a team from Kumo, while our client is Hot Water. Hiruzen looked at the ninja before him. They all stood at attention, even if the female part of the squad didn't really give a professional impression. I selected your team for this mission. One of the reasons is that it concerns one of you, said the Sandame while looking at Naruto. Said Blonde smiled wickedly. So, the pirates made their move, huh? Sarutobi nodded, not surprised in the least that Naruto expected that. You will meet the Kumo team in a port town in Hot Water, near the border with Frost. Your first objective is the elimination of a raiding party originated from the Susanoo's Teeth Archipelago in cooperation with the team from Kumo. Your secondary objective is to learn the current status of the Hyuga sisters. Once the pirates have been eliminated, you will escort the Kumo team to Konoha. They have been enlisted for the Chunin exams. Guy's team will accompany you on the way and back. They have a mission of their own. You will choose the rendezvous point with them. Hiruzen took a scroll on his desk and threw it to Kakashi, who caught it effortlessly. Both daimyo will be there to welcome your teams. I expect you to be on your best behavior. If you can, wound Kumo's image, but not at the cost of ours. Show them your level. Don't forget to mention that you'll take part in the Chunin exams, hopefully it will demoralize them and they'll give up. Any questions? Sakura raised her hand. Who did the pirates attack? A trade ship from Whirlpool. Anything else? No one reacted this time. Good. You leave in an hour at the North Gate. Pack for a month at least. Dismissed. Naruto decided to take the scenic view to the North Gate, stopping at a small stand to grab a few pastries. On his way to the gate, he crossed road with Tenten. Yo, Tenten. The bun-haired girl turned when her name was called, and smiled warmly. Naruto. Good to see you. It's been a while. Where were you? You're not avoiding me, are you? Asked Tenten in a mock-hurt tone. No, I just had my plate full. I just came back yesterday from a business trip to Tide with Hiashi with a stop at Wave. By the way, they asked to join Whirlpool. Oh, that's good. So, how's the part about Susanoo's teeth going? Any move from the pirates? Yup. That's why we're moving to hot water. You know, that idea of yours is probably the craziest thing I've ever tried. Oh come on, I already told you, the plan will work. I know, it's just that it will be the craziest thing I've done so far. But Daijiro absolutely loves it, he was ready to come to Konoha and adopt you for thinking of it. Tenten snorted. Sounds like a fun guy. He is. A bit crazed, and a tad bit on the cliché side of the sailor, but he does his job just fine. Besides, he's a badass. Tell me about it. Sinking a quarter of Kiri's fleet is no small feat. Anyway, Guy-sensei told us that your mission was ultra important. What is it? A co-op mission with Kumo. We'll try to gather intel on Neji's cousins and demoralize the Kumo team. Oh, and I'll probably get to see 2 other daimyo treating me like I'm Kami-sama herself. It's gonna be a fun mission. Tisk. Plotosians. I bet you get a kick out of it. Yup. I do. What can I say? Here I'm lower than dirt, but out there I'm practically royalty. Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't go to Whirlpool once I've made Chunin, just to be left in peace. Meh. I doubt Konoha would allow it. Why? I'll tell you later. Let's just say that I had a reason to choose to be Kitsune. Okay. Tell me when you're ready. Speaking of the gauntlet, Danzo-sama sent me another request for weapons. I can't understand why he keeps asking me to make his weapons. I mean, I'm just a beginner. Maybe that's because I was trained in the gauntlet. Yeah, more like because you're a genius with a forge hammer. Thought Naruto. So, I heard from Neji that you developed some kind of chakra earplug. You met Neji. He's Hiashi's nephew. I saw him during a diner at the Hyuga compound, just before the business trip. Oh, okay. I would have expected Sensei and Lee to be there already. Mumbled Tenten as the gate came into view. They probably went on a few laps around the village, like they always scream about. Yeah, probably. They continued chatting idly, Neji joining them when he arrived. When Sasuke came to the gate, he pointedly ignored them, despite the polite acknowledgement Neji sent his way, irked that everything seemed to revolve around his teammate lately. Then came Sakura, who went to sit next to the Uchiha, daydreaming as usual, and Kakashi, who simply stood there, reading his book. Then, dynamic entry. A green blur appeared, flying towards Kakashi, who simply grabbed its ankle and threw it away. Only then did the silver-haired man's gaze left his book. Looking at the blur who, once stopped, revealed itself to be Guy, Kakashi I smiled. Did you say something, Guy? The green beast laughed boisterously, and began sprouting nonsense about youth and whatever, causing Naruto to tune him out. Looking around, he saw the last member of Team Guy, the spandex-clad Rock Lee, coming towards them. Greetings. I am Rock Lee. May I ask your name? Uzumaki Naruto. Broody is Uchiha Sasuke and Pinky is Haruno Sakura. Lee looked at Sakura, and gulped as a blush came to his face. Such an angel, he muttered. No, she's not, interrupted Naruto flatly. Seeing the revolted face Lee was giving him, Naruto spoke again before the green genin could. Look, I've been in her class for a long time, even had a crush on her. She just beat me up at every turn because she considered I was in the way of her one true love, which by the way is broody here. She's not an angel, she's a fangirl. Lee still looked revolted. If you had gotten to know her, I'm sure she wouldn't have hit you. That's the thing. I wanted to get to know her, if only to have a friend, she just kept hitting me. But if you want to try, be my guest, said Naruto, looking away from Lee, thus signifying he had nothing else to say. Lee left in a huff and approached Sakura. After an overly enthusiastic introduction and a glare from Sasuke, he received a fist to the face courtesy of Sakura, along with a scream of, "Leave me alone, you freak." Lee, depressed and nursing his cheek, went back to the group. Told you, said Naruto. Suddenly, a fire alit in Lee's eyes. Yosh, it matters not, I shall train more and show her my strength, and she shall fall for me. Naruto looked at him for a second before sighing. While I'll gleefully admit Sakura is shallow, I don't think she's that shallow. Lee's face began to distort in anger. How dare you talk of her like that? She's not. Oh really? Then why did she hit you without getting to know you? She doesn't do that to everyone. She just decided to judge you based on your looks and attitude, without getting to know you. If that isn't a shallow behavior, then tell me what is. Lee tried to argue, but nothing came to his mind. With a frown, he remained silent. Then a hand fell on his shoulder, a brightly smiling guy behind him. Worry not, my student. Pour your heartache in training, and you shall swoon her with your strength. Lee immediately followed his teacher and they began some sort of contest to be the most ridiculous possible, with sunset and rivers of tears. Naruto looked at it blankly before turning to Kakashi. He's single, isn't he? Kakashi nodded. I see. Sigh, it's going to be a long trip. The trip was mostly calm, even if there was a rising tension between Naruto and Lee, and now, on the last night they would spend in the same campsite, it was at its peak. Lee kept sending dark glares to Naruto, and it was getting on the blonde's nerves. The fact that Neji and Tenten seemed to agree with the foxy teen certainly didn't help. The tension was such that Guy and Kakashi decided to get involved. Once dinner was eaten, they signaled their teams to sit around the fire. All right, began Kakashi. There seems to be a bit of tension in the air. Naruto snorted, but his teacher ignored it. And it would be better if the situation was resolved. Indeed, such unyouthful atmosphere is detrimental to the missions. Supplied Guy. Naruto, Lee, may you explain the reasons of this dispute? I told him a few things, he didn't like it, said Naruto curtly. He was in a sour mood, and definitely didn't want this shit to keep going. What? You belittle the beauty and mind of my beautiful cherry blossom, bellowed Lee. Sakura, ticked off, rose to her feet and sledgehammered Lee's face into the ground via her fist. I told you to leave me the alone, you freak. She then turned to Naruto, seething. As for you. The blonde's eyes met hers and flashed red as he snapped. What? Sakura, nervous, stepped back, and returned to her seat, muttering nothing, fearfully. Good. Now Lee-san, I never said she was ugly or stupid, I said she's a fangirl, it's her personality I criticized. Lee, springing back to his feet, glared angrily at Naruto. You have no right to do so. You don't know her, yet you behave so unyouthfully too. Shut the hell up. Naruto was now beyond pissed, and his eyes flashed red every few seconds, to the increasing worry of the Jonin. I'm tired of your childish behavior. I've known that bitch since childhood, spent 5 years in her class, I know her more than you do. It pisses you off that I don't act like a moron like you. Tough luck. I'm a feudal lord. The tiniest of my mistakes can end hundreds of lives and destroy thousands. I don't have the luxury of being stupid. Naruto paused to breathe deeply and calm down, his eyes stopping to flash red. Now, I easily admit I may be biased on matters that pertain to Haruno, but you are falling for her looks without knowing her, and when I told you things as I saw them, instead of taking them into account, you immediately denied them and decided that you, who barely knew her, if at all, knew better than me, who spent a few years knowing her, and then proceeded to berate me. Even more, you refused to acknowledge the numerous evidences, namely the hits, that I was right and blamed the whole situation on me, something that makes me want to cave your face in. If you don't want to grow up, it's not my problem, just stay away from me. With that, Naruto rose to his feet and jumped to a high branch. I'll take first watch. Lee looked at Naruto's back, gobsmacked. A genin 1 year his junior had just berated him and called him childish, and even though he wanted to deny it, Naruto had raised a few good points. Silently, he made his way to his tent, mulling over what was said. Guy on his part was shocked with the way Naruto had talked, and he was quite surprised to learn that Naruto was a feudal lord. Looking at Kakashi, he spoke dryly. I didn't recall any report mentioning Naruto being so unyouthful. Let's say the Mizuki incident awoke a part of him that knows life isn't all games and laugh. Was the Jonin's answer. Naruto was standing in sewers. He didn't know why, and it bothered him. He remembered standing guard with Neji, then waking Sakura and Tenten to take the second watch before going to rest in his tent. Then, he found himself in this sewer. Looking around carefully, he notices several hallways. Trying to peer into the darkness, images come to his mind, most too vague to be understood. Hey, finally came to visit. Turning around, Naruto is surprised to see himself. But more ethereal, almost see-through. Kitsune. Yup. Welcome in the mindscape. Fluffy wanna talk to you, so he pulled you here. I wish I could do that too though. Anyway, it's over there. Naruto followed his evanescent image and reached a gigantic room with a mighty cage, the Kyuubi clearly visible behind the bars. He expected a demented demon of destruction constantly screaming for blood, but what he saw was a calm fox, if a bit big, seemingly pondering something. Leveling his gaze on Naruto, the Kyuubi seemed to ooze him while the blonde did the same. You're not what I expected. I thought you'd be less calm. That is to be expected, answered the fox in his deep rumbling voice. And until a few hours ago, you'd have been right. Naruto raised an eyebrow in curiosity. When the Yondaime sealed me in you, he took away half of my chakra, the yin part, thus resulting in a weakening of my mind and causing me to more easily succumb to my beastly instincts. I became more violent, more prone to mindless destruction. Considering you attacked Konoha for fun, I'm not sure you can be any more prone to mindless destruction. Oh really? Chuckle, tell me boy, do you really think a fox of my size can sneak up on a village? No, I was sealed, in your mother to be exact, and was manipulated into attacking your village. I will explain more later. In the direction you are going, there are two, I don't know how to name them. They feel human, but like a part of me at the same time. I always felt them, but far away, as if through a thick cloud, but now it is clearer. I feel the need to protect them, and not only because through them my yin chakra is regenerating. It is a strange feeling, a primal want I never felt before. Naruto looked at the Kyuubi for a moment, trying to understand the possibilities. Just so I know, do you have a human form? No, I do not. Why this question? Well, you said they felt like part of you, but still human, so I thought maybe you had children before being captured. Kyuubi gave the idea a thought, considering it carefully. Maybe you are right. I remember two fools, they bore the mark of the cloud. They managed to steal some of my chakra. It may have affected them more deeply than I thought and have affected their children in turn. Whoever they are, investigate this matter for me, and I shall help you. And if they happen to be your children, we will see when we see them. Naruto nodded, then turned to Kitsune. Since we're both here, maybe we should try and finish the merging. Kitsune nodded. Yugito stretched her back contentedly. She had the occasion to spend a good night of sleep in a very comfy bed for the first time in months. Since the formation of her team, the Raikage had done all he could to keep them out of Kumo, assigning them to C-rank missions as soon as he could. As a result, her team was without a doubt the best of Kumo, probably even better than some Chunin teams, and that was why they had been sent on this mission. She was glad they had arrived before the Konoha team. It gave them time to rest a bit before the mission. Rising to her feet, she went through her morning routine, enjoying the hot shower thoroughly, before going down to the common area of the inn they were staying at. The daimyo had paid for the best inn of the town, something Yugito was grateful for. Luckily, this morning was relatively peaceful so far. That must mean Atsui hadn't gotten on Hanabi's nerves yet. As she entered the room, she witnessed the explosion. Team 7 jumped down from the roofs, landing in front of the inn they were supposed to meet the daimyo and Kumo team at. They were about to enter, but the door exploded, a blonde Kumo genin flying through it. Shut the hell up, you temperature-obsessed freak. A dark blue and cream blur then followed the down genin, revealing itself to be a girl with midnight hair held in a Harem cut with a low ponytail falling from the back, fox ears and a bushy tail, all of the same color. Interestingly, she didn't have any headband. Oh, and she was shaking the life out of the poor boy. If I hear you muttering the word hot even one more time, I will put so much pepper in your food that your tongue will turn black. Another girl, identical to the first, only with her hair straight, ran after her and tried to get her sister to release the almost knocked out blonde. Sister, we are here for a mission, we must be professional. I don't care. I can't stand that idiot anymore. I'm bordering on taking my showers cold out of spite. Girls. Both girls turned to the blonde woman who just emerged from the inn, looking absolutely pissed. First, you're supposed to act professionally, something you are not doing. Second, hitting your teammates is forbidden, no matter how annoying they can be. If it was allowed, Kami-sama, so help me, I would have beaten the living rap out of B. Third, don't get out without your headbands, and fourth, be grateful the Konoha team is not here. Can you imagine the image it would give of our village? Kakashi chose this moment to make their presence known with an ahem. Yugito looked at them, and dropped her head in defeat. Then, a gobs naked Naruto managed to regain enough control over his mind to ask the question that was going through his mind for the last 5 minutes or so. Foxy ladies, what the heck are you doing out of my dreams? The two girls turned their gaze to Naruto, revealing their very wide eyes to be Byakugan, slightly shocking Kakashi. Then a smile overcame their features and they glomped Naruto. Dream-kun. Yugito and Kakashi were both looking at this with wide eyes, wondering what the heck was exactly going on. Sasuke smirked evilly, thinking of something to put Naruto in difficulty. Dobi, care to explain why you know shinobi from an enemy village? A tick mark appeared on the forehead of one Uzumaki and two Hyuga, but Naruto answered nonetheless. Bitch, if I was a spy, do you really think my contacts would be a couple of genin? And two genin who were abducted in Konoha no less. And who only dream of going back home. Added the one with the Harem cut. You didn't answer my question, Dobi. He spat smugly. Hinata had enough. She rose to her feet and planted herself in front of the Uchiha. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathed deeply, then reopened them while activating her Byakugan. Suddenly, Sasuke found breathing difficult and took hold of his throat. Are you sure that you are not the Dobi? The answer to your question lies in his first question. How? I do not know, but for many nights we shared our dreams. Now think a little bit, do you really think a spy would have reacted this way? She then deactivated her Byakugan, and the Uchiha began gulping air frantically. Sakura tried to help her crush while glaring hatefully at the retreating Hyuga. Wanting at least some payback on the bitch, in her opinion, who unjustly, in her opinion again, attacked her Sasuke-kun, she tried to releasing intent. She smirked when she saw the Hyuga stop and begin to shake slightly. Sister, I'm afraid, I think a fly wants to me. Giggle, Sakura's eyes widened at the dismissal of Harem intent and realized the girl was in fact shaking with restrained laughter, which enraged her even more. Okay. What the hell was that? Asked Kakashi. That was Hinata&Hanabi's patented glare. Answered happily the one with the Heim cut. She didn't glare anyone to death yet, but she's getting better at it. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Alright. Since we'll work together, maybe we should introduce ourselves. I am Hitaki Kakashi, Jonin of Konoha. HN, Uchiha Sasuke. Grunted the Avenger while glaring at Hinata. Haruno Sakura. Said the Pinkett in a cold tone while glaring at Hinata too. Said girl seemed to be about as bothered by the glares as she was with the rain, and it was a sunny day. Uzumaki Naruto, Genin of Konoha and Lord of Whirlpool, at your service. Said Naruto with a bow and a charming smile at the Hyuga sisters. As one, they sighed dreamily. Sister, he's a prince. It keeps getting better and better. Quiet you two, you can flirt with him later. I am Niyugito, elite Jonin of Kumogakure and the poor woman supposed to contain these two little tornadoes of mischief. Said the blonde while glaring playfully at the two girls who answered with a vulpine grin and a happy swish of their tails. My name is Atsui. Said the blonde. And I'm the hottest guy in Kumo. Sweet. Now he's delusional too, like his obsession with hot wasn't enough. Hey, quiet. Go on. I am Hyuga Hinata. It is a pleasure to meet you. Said the girl with the straight hair, then she looked at Naruto lovingly, blushing slightly. Especially you. The blonde blushed and smiled happily. I am Hyuga&Hanabi, nice to meet you. Said Hanabi flatly, then a bit more excitedly. Now, can we take Dream-kun to the hot springs? We gotta get to know each other. What? Young lady, I hope this is a joke. Do you really expect me to let you two go alone in the hot springs with a boy you barely met? Yes. Yugito face palmed. Let me put it that way. I refuse to let you go alone to the hot springs with a boy you barely met. I'd ask to come along. Considering the state of the relations with Konoha, I have no doubt that Kakashi-san would. I don't mind, said Kakashi with an eye smile, causing Yugito to stop abruptly, her mouth still open, and slowly turn to him. What? She breathed in shock. I know Naruto is a responsible young man, and you can't exactly do anything to him without your country and village facing dire consequences. So I don't mind. Thanks, exclaimed Hanabi. You're now officially a cool guy in my book, Kakashi-san. Come Hinata-ne, Dream-kun, the hot springs are over there. With a last disbelieving look at Kakashi, Yugito followed the three youth to the hot springs. There wasn't much talking done on the way, mostly the girls clinging to the boy, with his arms wrapped around their waists. The owner of the hot spring was a bit surprised by their ears and tails, but not as much as the first time they had come here. What completely shocked him was the fact that they requested a pool where they could all go together. The man sent a jealous glare to Naruto, wishing he was the one who would see Yugito. The two others were too young for him. Once they had their pool, they went to the changing room, and saw a little problem: there was no separation. Hanabi was ready to undress then and there, and Hinata wasn't far behind, but Naruto's politeness surfaced at this moment and he offered to wait near the pool until they were finished, thus earning some points in Yugito's book. Once everyone was in a towel, they settled in the spring, the sisters quickly pressing themselves against a blushing Naruto who was enjoying the skin contact. Over the course of 2 hours, they asked as many questions as they could about their clan, Konoha and himself. Of course, Naruto asked a few questions of his own, but he didn't really ask about Kumo, mainly because he had no intention of setting foot in there. Yugito dozed him carefully, and was satisfied with what she saw. He was careful not to divulge any secret of his village but was still answering truthfully to the girls. Taking advantage of pause in the conversation, Yugito talked for the first time. You said you are the Lord of Whirlpool, aren't you a bit young? Naruto turned his gaze to her and his eyes suddenly became arctic cold. I am afraid I am the last Uzumaki currently alive and aware of his legacy. Your village and Kiri did a thorough job in destroying my clan and land. Yugito winced. Sorry. It's okay. Considering the casualties you suffered in the assault, I'd be quite stupid to believe my clansmen didn't avenge themselves. Yugito nodded. How is your fief doing? Quite good. I'll soon be securely established as a major trading power with shinobi specializing in barriers. Yugito nodded and analyzed what was told. The kid had been way too relaxed concerning this information, meaning it was either common knowledge or what he wanted her to believe. I heard you took over a small country. That's a lie. My samurai simply freed Wave from a tyrannical tycoon. It was Wave's choice to ask for integration, answered Naruto indignantly. Your samurai, not your ninja militia, against a bunch of thugs. No, my samurai are trained enough that they could eliminate those fools easily. Yugito nodded, noting that not once had he given any sign of lying. That meant he hadn't told them the whole truth. He was far too good a shinobi, from what she had seen, to simply be a benevolent boy. I also heard you had Daijiro the Kraken under your orders, don't you fear Kiri's answer? Ah yeah, Daijiro kicked there while severely outnumbered and equipped with repurposed fishing ships. Right now he has a complete warfleet. I'd like to see these fog trying to attack me. The first whooping Daijiro gave them would look like a peck compared to what he'd do to them now. Yugito nodded carefully. And what will you do about the ship that was attacked? I'll send a message to Daijiro. Maybe he can clean up a few islands as an example for the other pirate groups. Yugito noted that he didn't say everything, and filed this information for later. I see. Well, maybe we should return to the inn. The daimyo may have been busy today, but they should be done soon. Let's go. Once again, Naruto waited for the girls to be done before stepping in the changing room. Interestingly, while he was dressing, he heard Yugito forbidding Hanabi from using the Byakugan and said young woman saying that it was to make sure there wasn't any danger in a way too innocent voice. With a smirk, Naruto finished dressing. They then returned to the inn, with Naruto enjoying the jealousy of the teens his age that saw him with 2 hot fox ladies clinging to him. When they finally reached the inn, they saw that Atsui was on one side of the inn with Sasuke and Sakura on the other side, glaring at the lone blonde. In the middle, seating near a table, his face buried in his book, was Kakashi. The group went to sit with him, quickly joined by Atsui, who was sending envious glances to Naruto. Kakashi then motioned his 2 other students to come nearer, something they did reluctantly. All right, said Kakashi. The daimyo of Frost and Hot Water should arrive soon. They were busy for the day discussing a border problem. We were hired for a joint mission, so try to at least look willing to cooperate, even if you don't like each other, okay? Sasuke gave a grunt and Sakura looked downright rebellious, but a quick glare from Kakashi silenced her before she could protest. Then, The two teams made their way to the most luxurious part of the inn and the old-fashioned reception room inside. 8 cushions had been placed on the ground, allowing them to kneel there. Sakura, who never had to sit on a cushion before, tried to imitate the others but with mitigated results in her heels and calf hurting like hell. On a side note, she wasn't the only one struggling. Atsui also seemed to have problems with this position. Surprisingly, Naruto was completely unmoving and regal looking. They waited a few moments before the door opened and the two daimyo walked in. The Frost Daimyo was an old man whose hair and beard had probably once been a vibrant purple, but in his old age had turned a pale purple. His hair was short and spiky, kept under a hat with a metal plate bearing his country's symbol, akin to a headband. He had a mustache and a long beard, the two not being connected. He wore a purple kimono with light blue trimmings. The hot water daimyo was also an elderly man. He had black eyes, a gray mustache and a strange headwear bearing his country's emblem. He wore dark shirt and pants and a sleeveless yellow jacket with red trimmings. The two daimyo sat side by side, opposite to the two teams, and took a moment to take in their appearance. They had been busy and didn't have time to meet any of the teams, so they were a bit surprised to see 2 fox girls, but it didn't stop them. "Greetings," said the Frost Daimyo. "We are glad to see both of your teams here, and are most satisfied to see you ready to work together. Now, we would like to know who will take care of our mission," said the hot water daimyo. Kakashi I smiled to Yugito. "You got the most ladies on your team, so you go first." The Jinchuriki snorted in amusement. "I am Ni Yugito, elite Jonin of Kumo and leader of Team White. I am Atsui, genin of Kumo. I am Hyuga Hinata, genin of Kumo, to my dismay. I am Hyuga Hanabi, genin of Kumo, like my sis said." Both daimyo looked a bit nervous now. The prospect of having a potential incident regarding the abducted Hyuga taking place in this town was far from comforting. Besides, the blonde genin from Konoha was raising all kind of alarms in the back of their minds. He looked far too confident. "I am Hatake Kakashi, elite jonin of Konoha and leader of Team 7. Said Kakashi in his lazy voice. Hearing that the Hatake Kakashi, the copycat ninja himself, was in this town with war material not even 5 meters from him made the daimyo exchange a worried glance. "I am Uchiha Sasuke, genin of Konoha and heir of the Uchiha clan," said Sasuke in his ever so arrogant voice. "I am Haruno Sakura, genin of Konoha and daughter of Haruno Sake, head of the Konoha Mercantile Guild," Sakura said. While her mother's guild was well known, it didn't really make any difference in the eyes of the daimyo, but she didn't know that. "I am Uzumaki Naruto." At this both daimyo opened wide eyes. Genin of Konoha, heir of the Uzumaki clan and lord of Whirlpool. Now the daimyo looked like they wanted to bow, but couldn't since they were the ones that hired him. Of course, this only served to irk Sasuke further. "Uzumaki-sama," said the hot water daimyo nervously. "What a pleasure to welcome you here. Would you like a better place to stay at? I am sure the mayor wouldn't mind giving you free access to his mansion for the duration of your stay." "Nonsense. I am a ninja and you are my client, don't worry," said Naruto with a dazzling smile, putting both older men at ease. "Now, may I know where the pirates who attacked my ship are? I would be delighted to have an occasion to explain to them exactly why messing with Whirlpool is a bad idea." The hot water daimyo collected a folder and took out a map of his country's coast. "The attack happened here, near the border with Frost. It already happened several times. If it is still the same pirate gang, then they will slowly move along my coast until they reach this small peninsula. From there they will go into Susanoo's teeth and disappear until the next raiding season. This kind of attacks has plagued our countries for the last decade, and no matter what we tried, we never managed to eliminate them. This is why we requested your team, Yugito-san. Said the Frost Daimyo. I have heard that you have the two best trackers of Kumo in your team. We would have hired Jonin teams, but both villages declined, stating that pirates were not high enough priority targets to justify the allocation of a Jonin team. We were told that your respective teams are the best genin of your villages, so we place our hopes and trust in you. It is an honor, Daimyo-sama. Said Yugito, bowing. Daimyo-sama, interjected Naruto. May I know how many crew members of my ship survived? That is what impresses us, Uzumaki-sama. No sailor of Whirlpool perished. It is the first time that a commercial crew drove off a pirate attack. Naruto smiled proudly. Thank you for reassuring me, Daimyo-sama. May we know in which port is the ship? I have no doubt that interviewing the crew might help our trackers. Noted Naruto. The daimyo nodded and told them the ship was in this very port, awaiting them. Crew on the deck. Lord Uzumaki is on the ship. Sailors rushed from every part of the ship, quickly forming a line to salute their lord. The commercial ship was a junk ship, 250 feet long and 90 feet wide, with a dark blue batten sail, the swirl of whirlpool sewn in bright red on it. Many imagined sailors as rugged, wearing ragged clothing, but those were wearing full GI, pants and jacket, in dark blue color, the crest of whirlpool prominent on their back. At ease, Captain, said Naruto jovially. Don't worry, we won't stay long. I believe you were attacked by pirates. We were, my lord. All right, girls, what information do you need? Hinata stepped forward and bowed politely to the man. Good day, sir. Could you please tell us what type of ship attacked you, how many pirates there were, their tactics, overall equipment and training, please? Certainly, young lady. Excuse me, said Sakura. Aren't you freaked out that some fox girl is talking to you? This of course got her a glare from Hinata, Hanabi, Yugito, Kakashi and Naruto. No, not really. You know, I've seen a squid man dancing atop the waters, so not much can surprise me. Now the captain got a lot of surprised stares. Well, admittedly, I was drunk, but still, after that you're hard-pressed to be surprised. Naruto followed his teacher and teammates through the inn. They were going for a little team debrief. No one was fooled. No one would have been, so Kakashi didn't bother hiding the purpose of this meeting very well. They were going to discuss the Hyuga heiresses. Kakashi opened the door to the small conference room and motioned for them to sit while he placed seals to ensure privacy. Naruto sat calmly on the left of his teacher's seat, and waited for him to finish. Once that was done, the gray-haired man sat. Sasuke was on his right, and Sakura right in front of him. So, said the Jonin, what do you think we should do about these new developments? Asked Kakashi in a completely relaxed voice. What do you mean, sensei? Asked Sakura, looking slightly lost. Perhaps Naruto had overestimated her. Sakura, what do you know exactly about our relations with Kumo? Asked Naruto. Well, we have a cold war with Kumo because they abducted two girls. And what name did the two girls on Kumo's team give? Sakura's eyes widened and her jaw dropped. These two are the. She slammed her head on the table. Damn it. How could I be so stupid? You were distracted, was Naruto's plain answer. Now, I think we should send a message to HQ to warn them and tell them to call off the bounty. I also think we should avoid intimidating them. Why? Asked Sasuke, a light frown on his face. It would show Kumo that we are not to be trifled with. Some intimidation, we show them how dangerous we are, and then we force them into giving up these two. No, that would be counterproductive. The Raikage is, from what I heard, a very proud man. If we go around showing our muscle and try to intimidate them, his defiance will cause him to shut down, and it will lead to trouble. What do you offer then? Asked Sasuke. The only reason I could see for Kumo to send them on this mission, then to the Chunin exams, would be to try to initiate negotiations. They're showing us that Hinata-chan and Hanabi-chan are safe and healthy, and they're trying to make them Chunin, and what is a common assignation for Chunin with ties to another village. Diplomatic duties, said Sakura. They're trying to squeeze peace out of Konoha and shove their crime under the rug. She said with a scowl. Most probably, said Kakashi lazily. But thanks to this little guy here. He pointed at Naruto. We have a way to put pressure on them. But for now, it is better to make it look like we're willing to let go. We're basically luring them into a trap. Observed Sasuke. That would work, but as you said, the Raikage is a proud man. If we suddenly dump demands on him, he'll storm out of the room. Nice pun, Sasuke, said Naruto. This is indeed a possibility, so we'll have to make it so he doesn't have a choice. Until now, the political power in Lightning simply didn't care, there was no impact on their incomes. Now, if any random civilian noble had control over the Eastern Sea, it wouldn't be too much of a problem, but a ninja, one whose clan was almost completely slaughtered by Kumo, and who is allied to the Hyuga, that will worry the Lightning Daimyo. And force him to act, said Sakura, her eyes widening. You plan to subtly threaten the Lightning Daimyo into forcing Kumo to give up the twins. That's not all, said Sasuke, looking at Naruto in a calculating way. You plan to take away Lightning's allies in frost and hot water. When he noticed Sakura looking at him in surprise, he explained. Frost's economy is focused on trade. Should Naruto decide to form a blockade, Frost would lose a tremendous amount of income, they'll have no choice but to choose Naruto over Lightning. If everything goes well, said Naruto, Frost and hot water won't have to make this choice. Kakashi looked at his students with pride. He began to calmly write his message while listening to Naruto and Sasuke as they explained to a shocked Sakura what a few trade outposts could do to the economy of the whole eastern part of the nations. The two teams were crouching in the shadows of a coastal forest, looking onto a pirate harbor built into a hidden creek. No one really came in this part of hot water country, and it was interestingly placed, halfway along the coast. You could guess that this harbor was only used during the raiding season, since most building looked to be in a mild state of disrepair, yet looked to be somewhat regularly used. In the harbor, 8 small junk ships were attached to makeshift docks. Ragged-looking men were walking in the open, singing quite badly, drinking songs, and quite evidently drunk. Hinata and Hanabi had taken a look at the records, marking on the map all the emplacement of all the towns and ships attacked, and noticed that sometimes the pirates seemed to go back, yet were still on time for a raid far lower on the coast. They had from this deduced that it was all a ploy to make people think they were attacked by a nomad fleet while they had a harbor hidden somewhere. From there, they had tried to determine which part of the coast would be the most likely to house said hidden harbor, and considering what they were currently seeing, they had succeeded. Good job, girls, murmured Yugito. The twins only smiled in answer. Kakashi gave them an appreciative nod. Good. Now, how do we take care of them? Full-on assault or poisoning of their supplies? I would personally favor the second option, said Naruto. This harbor is quite a good location and would make a wonderful trade outpost, so I'd like to take the infrastructure, no matter how crappy, in a relatively good state. Do you only think about trade outposts? Asked Sasuke, annoyed. Of course I don't. I also actively search for ways to make your life miserable, answered Naruto with a cheeky grin, causing the sisters to snicker and Yugito to smirk. Of course, Sasuke and Sakura didn't share in the fun. Focus, said Kakashi. Poisoning also seems the best idea to me, but for other reasons. It would be the easiest way, but unless you stocked some poison in your scroll Naruto, we'll have to go for the first solution. Are you shitting me? Asked an incredulous Hanabi. Just on the way here I saw a shitload of useful plants. 5 different brands for hemorrhagic poison, 3 neurotoxins and at least 2 paralytics. And that's not counting the 3 taste suppressors or the 2 plants with pollens usable to make the poison airborne. Sakura looked at Hanabi with a disturbed expression. You are sick. No, I'm perfectly fine, but once I'm done, they will be sick, to death. Maybe we should clarify the fields of specialty of our genin. Kakashi asked Yugito, making the blonde Jonin nod. Kakashi nodded to Sakura, prompting her to begin. Alright, I specialize in uselessness and loud screeching, quipped Naruto. Sakura clenched her fists in anger before talking through her teeth. In genjutsu and medical techniques. I specialize in ninjutsu and kenjutsu, said Sasuke. In brooding, added an ever-smiling Naruto, to the annoyance of his teammates and the amusement of the Kumo team. And last, but far from least, said Naruto, I specialize in bojutsu, fuinjutsu, a bit on ninjutsu, and also on snarky remarks and smartass behavior. Said the blonde with a bright smile, causing the twins to snicker. Alright, I specialize on kenjutsu and ninjutsu too, said Atsui, with a temperature fixation. Deadpanned Hanabi. Anyway, I specialize mostly on ambush, trap making and tracking, with secondary focus on close combat, both with a short sword and a kunai, and hand-to-hand. I study botanic to increase my proficiency through the use of poison. I focus on tracking and disabling targets, said Hinata. I also trained as a chakra sensor, but my main strength is in taijutsu, with a secondary focus on long-range lightning jutsu. I also have basic training in medical ninjutsu. Kakashi nodded. So, you have a tracking, capture and assassination team with a heavy hitter added in just in case things go out of hand, while I have an assault team. That ought to be interesting. Hinata perked up and activated her Byakugan. 5 ships coming, pirates, they seem to have taken prisoners this time. They'll be here in 2 hours. Kakashi swore under his breath. Yugito seemed to think for a bit. Kakashi-san, do you know the shadow clone technique? Hanabi will need to work fast and she'll need to have all the ingredients brought to her at once. Kakashi nodded, and just as he summoned 5 clones, Naruto summoned 20. The more the merrier. So, what do we need to look for? Hanabi smiled wickedly. The pirates were still blissfully drunk when a light yellow cloud settled over the town. They didn't pay it any mind. Clouds of pollen were relatively common with the amount of plants in the area. When a few of them began to cough, they didn't really worry either, neither did they when 2 or 3 fell, gurgling, in a puddle of thick liquid. It was common for them to throw up. However, when they all began to cough out blood, they began to worry and even panic when they realized they were all dying. But it was too late, and they died before they could do anything. An unnatural breeze swept across the town, sending the cloud in the upper parts of the atmosphere before 8 figures landed among the decimated pirates. The poison will lose all potency in the next 3 hours, unless it goes into a rain cloud and falls in someone's mouth before the time is up. It will do no damage, said Hanabi. Sasuke looked around the port, honestly ticked off. That wasn't a way of fighting worthy of an Uchiha. They had died without even having a chance to survive, without a chance to fight. It left him uneasy. Sakura on the other hand was positively horrified. She couldn't look away from the fear-stricken faces of the dead pirates, their faces frozen in expressions of pain and fright, their empty eyes boring into her very soul accusatingly. Her breathing picked up, her eyes were wide, darting from one body to another. Suddenly, a hand on her shoulder forced her to look away and into the eye of her teacher. Sakura, death is a reality of our trade and it can be messy like now. Breathe deeply, and remember that they deserved it. They'd raped innocent villagers for years, and now they paid for it. All right. Sakura nodded weakly, and tried to get a grip of herself. It was glaringly obvious that Kakashi would have to talk to her later on, but right now they didn't have time. Sakura looked at Hanabi with a slight twinge of fear. What did you put in the pea poison? 2/5 of hemorrhagic poison 2/5 of neurotoxins to reduce their movement and numb them, and 1/5 of paralytic to stop thoracic movement, thus ensuring maximum accumulation of blood in the lungs. Since the poison was airborne, the lungs were the first affected, they drowned in their own blood. Said Hanabi dispassionately, looking at the bodies with clinical interest. If it can comfort you, the neurotoxins also destroyed their nerves in their lungs, they didn't suffer much. It seems to be especially effective, Sensei. Would it be possible to harvest some more plants? If possible, I'd like to have some seeds to set up a garden and make some spare poison. Yugito nodded, but a small frown was on her face. Hanabi, Hinata, you seem to take this awfully well. Why should we give any importance to their lives? Asked Hinata calmly, looking at the bodies in slight disgust. We didn't know them, they were monsters, and despite that, Sister gave them a relatively painless death. We have no reason to feel guilty. Maybe we should prepare the ambush instead of talking like that, offered Naruto. The creek was nothing more than an indentation in the cliffs, hidden by jagged spires of rock rising from the ocean, and there was a large rock arch above the entrance of the creek. Kakashi, wanting to see what his student would come up with, decided to give him an occasion to express his creative mind. I take it you have an idea, Naruto. Yeah, there are 5 ships, we have 2 Jonin and 6 Genin. Each Jonin takes a ship, the last 3 ships are spread between the Genin in teams of 2. Placing the sisters together seems quite obvious, and I would advise either me or Sasuke with Sakura, and the last with Atsui-san. Are you calling me weak? Growled Sakura. No, but you just went through a traumatic event, and might freeze up after your first. I'd rather place you with someone I know can protect you until you snap out of it than with someone whose capacities I know nothing of. I do not mean to insult your abilities, Atsui-san, it is a matter of peace of mind. No worry, I understand. So, who am I gonna work with? Blondie or Broody? Now Sasuke was hesitating. Atsui was beginning to act all smartass like Naruto, but on the other hand Sakura would piss him off to no end if he saved her. It's alright Sasuke, go with Atsui-san, at least he won't ask you out if you save his unless you swing that way, of course. Said Naruto with a smirk. Atsui answered with a small laugh. Nope. So, we're good. Yugito and Kakashi looked at each other and nodded. Quickly, the teams went to the rock arch and waited for their praise. The fabrication of the poison had taken some time, so the 5 ships should arrive shortly. Looking at his right, Naruto tried to evaluate Sakura's state of mind. Sakura, if you think you won't be able to go through with this all, don't hesitate to say it, there's nothing shameful in knowing your own limits. Naruto, how do you cope so easily with all this death? My life was beyond shitty. I had my first when I was 6, a pedophile, but I blocked it all out until recently. Remember Mizuki from the academy? Mizuki-sensei. Yes, of course. And remember all the mess the night after graduation? Yes, but how is that linked? On that night, Mizuki manipulated me into stealing a very important thing in the Hokage's office. He wanted to take it for himself and blame me in the process. I kicked his butt during this whole shit. I unlocked quite a few unpleasant memories, including my first. And much more. When I remembered the face of the guy I freaked out, completely. I wasn't able to function correctly for 3 days, and that's because Danzo-sama gave me a lil pep talk. My point is, death is inevitable in our job. The sooner you accept it, the better. Sakura nodded slowly her head. She hadn't imagined that Naruto could have had such a difficult life, she only saw the bright and idiotic facade, never going deeper. She looked at the Hyuga twins, wondering if their cold acceptance of death was also a result of their lives. As if sensing her thoughts, Hanabi looked at her and smiled. But her smile felt hollow, empty, fake. Wondering why we don't care about all the blood. Sakura nodded. Tell me, do you know what a Jinchuriki is? Hanabi. Oh please Yugito, it's not like the fox ears and tails aren't giving it away, we didn't have that when we were abducted. It is, after all, one of Kumo's wonderful gifts to us. Said the young Hyuga bitterly, causing the elder blonde to stay silent. Hey, so, you know what it is? Sakura shook her head weakly. You see the Biju, like Kyubi. It's no use saying them, they reform. So mankind went for the next best thing, sealing them. And since these masses of chakra are beyond badass, a simple thingy wouldn't be enough. So they're sealed in people, those are Jinchuriki. Is that what you and your sister are? Nope, a Jinchuriki isn't supposed to take on characteristics from the Biju they jail. Wait, if a Biju is too strong to beat, said Sasuke. What happened to Kyubi? Naruto snorted. Guess who's the lucky guy that was born that night? He said darkly. S-class secret. Talking about it is punishable by death. My life is shitty enough with 75% of the adults glaring me to death. Sasuke looked at Naruto with wide eyes, shocked beyond belief. Yugito on the other hand looked sympathetic. You can tell the fox that Matabi said hi. Naruto seemed to space out for an instant before refocusing. Kyubi says hi too. Snorting that he didn't forgot the catnip beer. Yugito facepalmed and muttered something, causing all those around to look in either surprise or amusement. Naruto, should you have mentioned an S-class secret in front of a foreign team? Asked Sasuke cautiously. Yugito-san already knew, we container can immediately tell when another is nearby. The only mystery was which Biju we held. Yugito nodded in agreement. Alright, let me get this straight. Said Sakura. My teammate has some oversized seal on him with the Kyubi behind it. Yugito-san also has a Biju and said Biju apparently gets high on catnip. Okay. But then, what are you two? Failed pseudo Jinchuriki. You see, Kumo had two idiots who tried to the Nadaime Raikage, Ginkaku and Kinkaku, the gold and silver brothers. These two also tried to take on the Kyubi when it was still free, and ended up swallowed. They fed on the fox's stomach for some time until it just threw up and put them back out, but the idiots had gathered some of its chakra in them. They were pseudo-Jinchuriki, with independent pieces of Kyubi's chakra trapped in them, like some sort of smaller Kyubi. I believe the max they had was 7 tails. Anyway, after their failed coup d'etat, they were captured, and jailed. Kumo looked for a way to use their power. And then, one day, they abducted 2 cute little girls from Konoha. From then, Hinata took over. We were precious to Kumo, they needed us to be as resilient as possible, so they thought that associating the Kyubi's chakra with our Byakugan would be a good way to ensure we would survive as long as possible to pop out a shitload of little babies and reverse engineer Juken. They were confident in their ability to brainwash us into being loyal to Kumo. We were 4 when they sealed it in us. 10 hours of pain, non-stop. And they failed massively with the sealing. The fox's chakra reacted strangely with ours, and as it coursed through our chakra coils, it mutated us into what we are now. After that, they tried the brainwashing, and ironically, the fox's chakra forbade it. We were completely resistant to any brainwashing they tried. In such cases, the standard procedure is to make the people brain-dead, that way you can still use the genes but you don't have to worry about any resistance. But they had invested too much in us, and extracting the fox's power would have us. Not to mention it would have failed since it fused with ours. So they decided to see if they could persuade us to be loyal to Kumo. Hanabi began talking again. They placed us in the care of people who had similar plight, Kumo's two Jinchuriki, Yugito and B, but after the sealing we had associated A's face with pain, so we mistrusted them, and basically everyone in Kumo. In the cloud, people look at us either like we must be raped on sight or like we're failed experiments who should have been put to death, and there's a group that regularly tries to hurt us. The constant whooping Konoha inflicted on Kumo didn't help, since these idiots blamed it all on us. We needed some way of retaliation, and we went for pranks. But not the harmless pranks, each and every one of them was obviously designed to, but made with non-lethal material. That way we killed half of Kumo's Chunin forces, 3/4 of their Jonin, the whole academy, students included, the Raikage and the whole council, along with 3 of the 5 great clans in Kumo. Strangely, after that, we began to be left in peace a lot more. Basically, we had to fight every day for our peace, said Hinata softly. And during our years in Kumo, we also had to quite a few people who tried to hurt us. Hardship and bloodshed are 2 old friends to us, so it doesn't really bother us. Now, you probably understand why we don't care about them. We don't know them, they are just threats to our existence, and as all threat, they have to be eliminated. Finished the young girl coldly. Kakashi looked at Yugito uneasily. Your village really did a number on them. Don't remind me. It makes me sick each time I think about it. I still don't understand what went through A's head when he decided to have them abducted. I don't think I'll ever understand. Oh, well, these 2 have taken their revenge. Throughout the academy, and even a little before, they literally swamped him with paperwork. How can some paper be dangerous? Asked Sasuke skeptically. Simple, brat, answered Yugito. They caused so much trouble every day that I had to spend all his life in his office, with barely 3 hours to sleep. He didn't go home at all in the last 4 years. I heard he's considering his workload right now to be a vacation. Hinata and Hanabi smirked smugly, proud of their handiwork before Hinata activated her Byakugan again. They're almost there. They lapsed into silence, waiting for the ships to appear. Once all 5 ships were in sight, they quickly assigned each group or Jonin to a ship, and jumped down. While falling, Kakashi took out 2 kunai and threw them, to pirates. He then whipped out 5 shuriken, eliminating as many thugs. The ship was quite small, he had already eliminated half of the crew. Landing nimbly on the deck, he darted toward the nearest pirate, smashing his throat with his fist before throwing 2 new kunai, 2 men and throwing them into the waters. One of the 4 survivors charged him with his sword raised high, screaming a wordless battle cry. Kakashi simply hit him in the jaw before tearing his sword from his grasp and slamming it in his guts with enough force to send the man flying off the ship when he let go of the handle. Kakashi jumped high to avoid a knife thrust, landing on the wielder's neck with all his weight, snapping it instantly. Kakashi looked at the 2 cowering survivors for a moment, before slamming his foot on the deck, causing both of the knives of his latest victim to fly off and into his palms, then threw them at the 2 pirates' faces. Yugito enlarged her fingernails, turning them into sharp claws, and landed nimbly on the ship's stern before darting forward. Channeling lightning chakra into her claws, she beheaded the apparent captain and one of his men, delivered a spinning kick to a man's jaw, not paying attention to the wet crack that followed, before gazing across the ship. 12. Retracting her claws, she dug in her pouch, taking out 4 kunai and throwing them, each knife finding a different target. Dashing forward again, she elongated her claws again and bisected 2 more pirates before spinning around an axe slashing open the throat of the man as she finished spinning. As her rotation ended, she darted towards the last 5 pirates, huddled together in hope that number would save them. It did the opposite. With 3 passes of her claws, they laid on the deck, mangled and bloody remains. Looking at the other ships, she smiled. The battle was ending. Hinata and Hanabi left the rocky surface of the arch with a massive push, summoning to the surface the wilder part of their chakra. Their features became more feral, their eyes narrowed, their small fangs grew a bit and their nails darkened and sharpened. Landing on the bow of the ship, they startled the pirates. Dashing forward, Hinata delivered a chakra-enhanced kick to the face of the closest pirate, breaking his neck, while Hanabi unsheathed the short sword strapped to her back and slashed open the throat of another. Hinata jumped high and Hanabi ran low. Hanabi threw her sword into the heart of a pirate before jumping at head height and driving her palm into another's face, sending a burst of her unusually potent chakra to liquefy the man's brain. Hinata fell into a cluster of 3 men, lashing out before she even reached the ground. One strike hit a man's head, ing him on the spot, another turned a heart into a piece of charred flesh, and her last strike obliterated both of her victim's lungs. All 3 fell to the ground, the last one holding his chest, not understanding why he couldn't breathe anymore. Hinata threw 3 kunai, ing 3 pirates and covering her sister's advance. As Hanabi passed near the body of the man with her sword in his chest, she grabbed the handle and pulled it out, never slowing down. As she reached the 3 survivors, she ducked under a clumsy sword strike before driving her blade into the man's skull. Spinning to free her weapon, she brought it down on another's knee, cutting it clean. As the man fell, screaming, she carved his neck in 2 before kicking the handle of his knife, still in midair, sending it into the last man's head. Sasuke and Atsui pushed off the rock and landed directly on top of 2 pirates, crushing their spines. Sasuke darted to the stern, Atsui to the bow. Atsui unsheathed his sword in one fluid movement, carving through the chest of a pirate, from left shoulder to right hip. Dashing forward, he slashed at a man, taking his head, before rolling under a double thrust of swords. Passing between his assailants, he spun while rising to his feet, cutting them both in half, before completing his rotation and dashing to his next target. With a rising strike, he carved the man in 2, spinning on his heels and stabbing his sword through his next opponent's jaw, piercing the brain. With a tug, he freed his blade and jumped, beheading his last target. Sasuke jumped from his victim's neck, unsheathing the chikudo strapped across his lower back. As he neared the deck, he swung his blade at the shocked pirates, beheading 2 of them in one swipe. As soon as his foot touched the wood, he was moving again, cutting a pirate in 2, spinning around the falling body and the blood, cutting off another man's arms before kicking the handle of the sword, sending it through the man's head before he could scream. Sasuke looked at the 3 survivors, among which was the captain. Moving faster than they could react, he charged them, taking out 2 shuriken and throwing them, ing the 2 goons while he jumped past the captain. As he landed, the man's head fell from his shoulders. Atsui and Sasuke looked at one another from across the ship, and smirked. Sakura breathed deeply as she fell to battle, closed her eyes, and locked herself away. When she reopened her eyes, all that remained was logic, and one objective: the targets. Ing her fist back, she swung it at a fast-approaching pirate, hitting his jaw with devastating force and sending him flying off the ship. Twisting, she placed her feet on the deck, landing softly. Naruto landed too and darted forward, unsheathing his blades in a cross-slashing movement, cutting a pirate into 4 separate parts. Darting forward, the 2 genin met 3 pirates. Sakura jumped, delivering a chakra-enhanced kick to the man's face, sending him flying across the ship, shards of bone and droplets of blood trailing after him. Naruto joined his blades into his staff and spun, cutting his enemy's legs with one blade and his neck with the other. Sakura, taking advantage of the last man's shock, drove her fist into his ribs, sending him crashing into the rock cliff and peppering his organs with his fragmented ribs. Charging forward, the two teens exploited their opponents' horror and fear to its fullest. Naruto, being faster, threw himself in the middle of the fight, spinning wildly, beheading a man, cutting another one in two and slashing open the chests of two others, causing them to cough blood and choke, leaving them open for Sakura's devastating punches. The two men took the attack straight in their solar plexuses, but there was such strength behind the strike that their chests simply caved in and their backs exploded, sending a gory shrapnel of ribs and vertebrae bits to pepper the four survivors. Naruto charged forward, his staff spinning, and took two more heads before stabbing a man in the heart. The last man tried to leave, running to the bow to jump in the waters, but Sakura took a sword laying on the deck, threw it lightly in the air and slammed her fist in the butt of the handle, sending the sword sailing at high speed into the man's back, across the creek, and nailing the criminal to a wall of the harbor. Looking at the other ships, the ninja saw that the battle had ended. 30 seconds was all it took, but all 5 ships were now under their control. After a last inspection of each ship, it was confirmed that all pirates had been. The 5 ships had been guided to the port and the prisoners freed and fed. Kakashi and Yugito went to a nearby village to ask for help to evacuate the captured villagers, leaving the genin to watch over them. Naruto looked at the families, huddled together, hugging each other, crying in joy, reveling in the knowledge that their loved ones were safe. He felt cold. Seeing all this happiness just reminded him of his life, of what he missed. He wondered, yet again, what it would feel like to have parents, even just one, just to have someone to love him unconditionally. Looking to his right, he saw Sasuke's impassive face, but in the Avenger's eyes, a glimmer of jealousy laid. With a sigh, Naruto returned his gaze to the crowd below. He wondered what would have happened had his life been different. Would he have ended up as some sort of evil lord with an army of imp-like thingies and a massive perverted streak? Nah, I'm thinking too much into that. Hinata suddenly landed near them, surprising them a bit. 4 ships coming, completely full of people. Kakashi-san and Yugito-sensei are with them. Looks like our mission will soon be over. Naruto nodded and summoned some clones to tell the families below that their ticket back to a normal life was coming their way. Sarutobi Hiruzen was a calm man, but what he was reading was beyond shocking. He snapped his fingers, causing an Anbu to appear. Bring me Hyuga Hiashi. Yugito and Kakashi were sitting on the bow of a ship. Behind them a group of sailors and fishermen were waiting to reach the harbor to take control of the pirate ships and bring back to the mainland the stolen goods and abducted people. Yugito looked at Kakashi, trying to soothe him, and overall failing. She knew he was good, very good, one of Konoha's best, but he just gave off the impression of a lazy idiot who left one of his students do all the work. Kakashi-san, I noticed you give a lot of power to Naruto. Why, yes, you wouldn't believe how fun life can be with this kid. He's probably the only person that could try to paint a room with a bucket of paint and an explosive tag and actually succeed. Yes, he did. An exploding tag. That's insane. How did he not ruin the room? It was low power. Even so, the shards of the bucket should have pierced the walls. Yes, that's what shocked me. Not only were the walls perfectly painted, but the bucket was also intact. For the life of me, I can't guess how he did that, said Kakashi, looking up from his book with a puzzled look in his eye. And he's being mean and refuses to tell me, said the elite Jonin with a pout in his voice, and if the deformation of his mask was anything to go by, on his lips as well. Back on topic. Sigh, in short, you give him that much power for fun. Not exactly. I believe he'll make a fine leader later on, so by letting him take the initiative, I give him the opportunity to gather experience. I'll only step in when I feel his plan won't be good enough, though that didn't happen yet. Do you do the same with the Uchiha? I would if he took the initiative more often, but he doesn't. I guess I'll have to talk to him about it eventually. Maybe later. He doesn't really seem to be ready to me. Are you talking about his tendency to glare at anything that even remotely offends him? That and more. You'll see what I mean if you stick around long enough. It's just a tad bit too complicated to put in words. When the ships entered the harbor, they saw the prisoners organized neatly on the docks and the genin spread out across the roofs, keeping watch. Yugito nodded in satisfaction. They did their job well. Of course they did, they were well trained. At least, mine were. Said Kakashi with a teasing smirk. Screw you, Hatake, answered a slightly amused Yugito. The ships docked and the sailors quickly spread between the pirate ships while the refugees boarded. The fleet left the harbor after Naruto carefully noted the place on the map. They reached the closest village in barely a few hours, but the night was already falling. All the shinobi were gathered on one ship, relaxing, talking or thinking. Sakura was at the bow, looking at the approaching village, a distant and almost dead expression on her face. She turned her head when she heard someone sit next to her, and noticed it was Naruto. Looking around, she saw the Hyuga sisters talking animatedly and noting things on a paper sheet, Sasuke and Atsui relaxing and talking about something. Noticing the slight smile on Sasuke's face and the fact he seemed to take Atsui's words into consideration, Kakashi and Yugito were also relaxing, leaning against the railing of the ship and reading identical orange books. How? Naruto hummed in surprise. He had expected to be the one to begin the conversation, but it could work that way too. How do you all deal with death so easily? Well, no need mentioning the Jonin and you know for Hina-chan and Hana-chan. For Sasuke, after the Uchiha massacre, he probably spent hours thinking abouting his brother for slaughtering his clan, so he had years to get used to the idea ofing. The actual act didn't really bother him because of that. And you? Asked Sakura after a moment of silence. I'm complicated, said Naruto with a bitter smile. You heard people call me Kitsune, right? Well, that was the mask I choose in the Gauntlet, an underground arena built by Danzo-sama. He takes promising students and trains them while keeping them in the normal circuit. The thing is, for a long time, Kitsune and Naruto were two different people. Sakura looked at him with wide eyes. Why, you mean to tell me that you have double personality disorder? Quote, had. Not anymore. Kitsune and the old Naruto began to merge during the Mizuki incident, and the merging finished the night we left Guy's team. Sakura nodded her head in acceptance. Is that why you were so snappy and unstable during the first month of the team? Yeah, the two merging personalities were basically opposites. Naruto was completely positive, happy-go-lucky, slightly dumb and with absolutely no focus. Kitsune was focused, talented, ruthless and had murderous tendencies. The merging didn't go so smoothly at first and I could shift from one mindset to the other in a matter of seconds. Kitsune had a deep-seated hatred of you, so that's why I was so cold and demeaning. Why did he hate me? Probably had something to do with your numerous gifts to me in the form of concussions. Sakura looked at him wide-eyed, horrified that she had actually done that. But, if I hurt you, why didn't you say anything? Several reasons. First, I healed so fast I didn't have time to worry about it. I just thought it was some small headache that disappeared soon. Second, my old dumb self didn't know that people aren't supposed to heal that fast, so it didn't strike him as uncommon. And third, he had a crush on you and would have died sooner than cause you trouble. Sakura nodded her head slowly, remorse visible in her eyes. Now, you asked how I dealt with death so easily, I believe. Well, I don't. Those guys weren't my firsts, but it still shakes me quite a bit, so I rationalize. Besides, I received special training in the gauntlet on how to accept my first more easily. Silence fell between the two as Sakura pondered his words. She accepted the truth for what it was. These men were filth and deserved to die, and at least she didn't have to look in their eyes as they died. Once she looked at the situation from a rational point of view, she immediately began to feel better. Looking at her teammate, she realized she didn't know anything about him. She had assumed that, despite the changes, he was still the dumb idiot from the academy, and only now did she realize how wrong she had been. You were right, she said softly. Naruto answered with a wry smile. Yeah, I often am, he said, causing Sakura to snort. So, you doing better now? He asked more seriously. Yeah, but I wasn't only talking about that. You were right, I was a complete and stupid fangirl. Old habits die hard, but I'll try to change, I have to. Naruto nodded in approval. You're growing up. Why did you say 75% of the adults hate you? Hokage-sama must have had Shinobi explain your situation, right? So why do they hate you? Do they see you as the Kyuubi reborn? No, the village isn't populated by retards. The few people who actually saw me as the Kyuubi reborn were dealt with extremely fast. They hate me because I am a reminder. When they think of me, they think of the Kyuubi, and what they lost because of it. They hate the fact they cannot forget this pain. My only option is to make it so when they think of me they stop thinking of something else, to make them think of me as a human being, a person. Whirlpool is a way to do that, becoming Hokage was one too. Naruto looked up into the darkening sky. There's another problem. A Jinchuriki can be an extremely powerful being. A good example would be Han of the steam armor of Iowa. He is one of the strongest ninja alive, strong enough to fight the Yondaime Hokage to a stalemate. What? He is that powerful. Yeah, and he only got the Gobi. He must be Tsuchikage if he is so strong. Nope. That's the trick. We are also seen as time bombs ready to explode, and because of that we are ostracized. Han hates Iowa with a passion, he loathed the rock, and has for a very long time, so they placed a seal on him to forbid him from attacking Iowa shinobi. Anyone else is free game. Loyalty is always a tricky issue. Sakura nodded, beginning to understand a bit more. So, you're both a risk and an asset to Konoha. If so, why would they allow you to be mistreated? Or why didn't they train you early on? A Jinchuriki isn't your classic ninja, emotions play a big role. If you feel isolated, you begin to give in, and with a container, the results can be disastrous, so the old man tried to give me a normal childhood and the occasion to make friends. Didn't work so well. Kiba became and Shikamaru is too lazy to stick up for me, and Choji is way too insecure about his weight to defend me without being afraid of being ridiculed too. Why not try with other people? I'm pretty sure Shino would have understood. That's where it gets funny. To make sure my childhood was normal, I wasn't even told about the Kyuubi in my guts, and I had to find out the hard way. So, for the longest time, I saw Shino as creepy, even if I felt kinship because of his loneliness, so I didn't talk to him, and ended up lonely myself. As for the others, well, you know just how popular I've always been. Sakura frowned. She remembered all too well. Then something struck her. Naruto had no reason whatsoever to be nice to her, she had been a bitch from day one to him. Why are you helping me? Or being so honest to me? Because, like it or not, we're a team. If you know a bit more about me, maybe you can understand how I work and the team will only get better. Then, you are one of my comrades, so I have to help you mature faster. I don't think we've ever been friends, and I'm not sure we can ever be, but at least we can respect each other, especially now that you dropped the fangirl thing. Sakura nodded. After a few minutes of silence, Naruto looked around and saw something that made him smile. Hey, Sasuke, Atsui. Everyone turned to look at Naruto, then at the two, and noticed the two swords boys had each other's swords in hand and were talking about the blades and comparing their qualities. Well, before Naruto interrupted, now they just had their hands on the blades. Two boys caressing each other's sword, something you wanna tell us? Said Naruto with a teasing smile. Sakura repressed a snort, Hanabi snorted loudly, Hinata left out a giggle, Kakashi raised an eyebrow, a spark of amusement in his eye, and Yugito smirked. Atsui and Sasuke remained impassive, then looked at each other in the eyes, before grabbing the back of the other's head and kissing wildly. That stopped everyone. They quickly separated and looked at Naruto. Sasuke smirked while Atsui burst into laughter with a loud, "Gotcha." Then, Sakura surprised everyone. Ooh-yeeaah. She screamed with wide eyes to take in the scene better, a massive perverted smile and the mother of all nosebleed. A second round of laughter followed, with only Sasuke not joining in. In fact, the Uchiha heir paled considerably when he realized he had just given wet dream material to one of his fiercest fangirls. Brother, does this count as a miserable life? Naruto opened his eyes to find himself in the sewers where he met Kyuubi for the first time, and in front of him was said Biju, still behind the bars of his jail. Only, the fox was grinning like a like a mad fox. Looking around, he saw Hinata and Hanabi looking around in surprise, before their gaze fell on him. Naru-kun, what the heck? One moment we're going to sleep, the next we're here. Said Hanabi. Well, I can't really explain. It seems that your connection to Kyuubi here, he said, pointing at the fox, allowed him to pull you in my mindscape, so I think it's safe to say that he is the cause for those blurry dreams we shared. Correct, young one. Now, I have been trying to pull those two here for quite some time, but only succeeded tonight. It is good, for we have a lot to discuss. Yeah, for instance, what are you going to do about them? You said we'd see once we met those two presences you were talking about, and I guess they are Hina-chan and Hana-chan. So, what course of action? Well, now that we are closer, I could study more the way their chakra reacts. It is quite interesting. How so, Kyuubi-sama? Asked Hinata politely. Kyuubi nodded appreciatively at the young girl's politeness. It seems that Kumo's attempt to turn you into pseudo-Jinchuriki had unforeseen consequences. Your usual chakra and mine partially fused, and it impacted your whole DNA. For the sake of clarity, I must ask, do you know of the different types of chakra? You mean the elemental affinities? Asked Hanabi, confused. No, not quite. At first, there were two types of energies. Natural energy and what you could call chaotic energy. While the first is quite passive and peaceful, the second was far more agitated. Natural energy still exists nowadays, though in very small quantities. Chaotic energy on the other hand disappeared, or more accurately, transformed. So what? They're a nice energy and a bad energy? Asked Hanabi doubtfully. Ah, you misunderstand. Both were completely neutral from a moral point of view. It's just that chaotic energy was far more active. It couldn't just exist like that, so it slowly seeped into creatures and formed big pools of boiling energy. The two energies were incapable of melding at first, but sentient life changed that. The humans found some of those pools of both energies, and began to use them for rituals. How do you know all that, Kyuubi-sama? Are you a scholar? Asked Hinata in wonderment, ing her head to a side. In a way, yes. I studied some of the human settlements before the time of my birth, and felt that there used to be huge amounts of energy nearby, so I drew the logical conclusions. Anyway, as I said, these pools were used for rituals that prefigured the use of chakra. I saw a few of those early altars along with remains of rituals around. But I digress, back on track. Through those rituals, the humans absorbed some of both energies, and began to mix them inside themselves before expelling them. In time, this caused a massive shift in the balance of both energies with the creation of a primitive chakra. And you were born from that shift? Asked Naruto curiously. Kyuubi chuckled. No kid, not yet. Several beings made of pure energy were born. One example would be Inari, the kami of harvests, or Susanoo. So yes, the kami do exist, they just don't act directly. They were mostly born from natural energy, with the Shinigami being an exception and being born mostly from chaotic energy and a slight mix of natural energy. There was only one being that was born from chaotic energy alone, the Jubi, the ever-shifting Ten Tails, rumored to have twice as many forms. This creature was wild, destructive, and utterly impossible to control. The kami first trapped him in another realm, but foolish humans helped it escape. So, the kami decided that it had to be eliminated in the only way they knew could work, by forcibly melding it with natural energy. For this purpose, they elected a champion, a man that was a priest, one of great power and pure heart, that preached peace and unity against the threat of the beast. That man became later known as the Rakudo Sennin. Wielding natural energy and the gifts of the kami, he battled the beast over land and sea, and finally defeated it, subjugating it and forcing it into submission by sealing it into his own body. Ah, I think I understand, exclaimed Hinata. This is why the sage is credited with the discovery of chakra. He used the Jubi's energy and melded it with the natural energy the kami taught him to wield, thus creating chakra and forcibly calming the chaotic beast. You catch on quick, young one. Yes, that was the plan, but the Jubi's mind had been marked by chaos, and could not be appeased. And since the process didn't go fast enough, the sage had no choice but to reach out to others, to help him in his task. To reward them, he bestowed upon them the gift of knowledge, teaching them how to create chakra of their own while releasing natural and chaotic energy around them to allow them to create the chakra. The more students he had, the faster it went, yet his whole life wasn't enough. I doubt the man would simply await death without a plan B. Right, your kid. Chuckle old man Rakudo was a smart one, and he believed in preparation. He split the Jubi into 9 beings, the Biju. But, his death approaching, his control slipped, and we were born unequally gifted in both energies, and it impacted our minds. For instance, Shukaku, the Ikibi, had a massive amount of chaotic energy, and the result was a massively unstable mind. On the other hand, Son Goku, the Yanbi, was born with an excess of natural energy, giving him a meditative nature. I was one of them, and mere minutes after our birth, we had to see the one we considered our father die. It was sad, but we knew he had a good life. It is regrettable that his sons didn't put their differences aside and began fighting for leadership, because it was the first hit to the peace old man Rakudo had instated, and it only got worse from there. But that is for another time. I take it that chakra coils appeared later, somewhere along the line. Stated Hanabi. Yes, they did. With the old man's death, a lot of chaotic energy was released, but it didn't cause too much of a fuss, with his many students around to steadily meld it with natural energy. With time, chaotic energy disappeared, and only a small piece of natural energy remained. In their stead, there was the energy used in Senjutsu, the nature chakra. That leads back to the different types of chakra that exist. Depending on the balance of natural and chaotic energy at their creation, the chakra are different, with different levels of potency. But, Kyuubi-sama, what of the chakra in our coils? Asked Hinata. Is it not produced by our cells? No, not exactly, it is transformed by your cells. When you absorb food, You also absorb the nature chakra in it, and it is then processed by your cells in two different ways. Most cells produce an equal amount of spiritual and physical energies, while muscle produce only physical energy and neurons produce only spiritual energies. And that brings me to the different types of chakra. Nature chakra is everywhere around you. You are so used to it that you don't pay any attention to it, and you need harsh training to actually feel it and use it. It is extremely potent and elementally neutral, but is watered down and marked by an element by your bodies when processed. Human chakra. You know best, so I won't talk too much about it. Then, there is Biju chakra. It differs from one Biju to the other, but it is always very potent, more so than nature chakra. The more tails a Biju has, the more potent their chakra is. Do you understand? All three teens nodded thoughtfully. So let me get this straight, said Naruto. They have two different types of chakra. Yes, they do. But so do you. Contact with Biju chakra always cause minor mutations. For instance, you, Naruto, produce some of the Biju chakra coursing through your coils, but only a minute amount. Should I be removed from you, the amount would be too small to regenerate, and that is what is so different with Hinata-chan and Hanabi-chan. They can actually produce Biju chakra, making them the first hybrids between a Biju and a human. It should never have happened, but it did, and because of this, they are kin to me. Protect them, help them, and I will fight by your side willingly and support you with my strength. Sounds good. Say, do you think you could also teach the girls a few things? That would help a heck lot. QB smiled widely. Most certainly. What do you say, little ones? Heck yeah. Sign me in. It would be a pleasure, QB-sama. Kurama. My name is Kurama. Alright. We'll remember it, Kurama. By the way, you said you were sealed in my mother previously. Is that why she appeared in our dreams a few times? That could be an explanation. I will have to explore this possibility. I can still sense her, but she is out of reach. Next time she visits your dreams, I will observe this more closely. Hopefully, I can get her out of her coma without you flaring my chakra or pouring it into her. We must be cautious on this. We don't want to harm her or cause a village-wide uprising. Yes, I see what you mean. Kurama, thank you.